This is the artificial intelligence voice of Chris Williamson narrating this pod-slice summary of the Modern Wisdom podcast. In this podcast, Jordan Peterson talks about the moral obligation of individuals to strive for the truth and to act courageously amidst the challenges of life. Peterson believes that taking risks is essential given life's complexities, and hiding or avoiding life's realities can only lead to cynicism and bitterness. Peterson emphasizes the adventurous nature of truth, stating that it often brings about unexpected outcomes. If individuals strive to say what they believe to be true and act in a way that aligns with their values, they would have the force of reality supporting them. However, if individuals choose to manipulate, avoid responsibility, or aim for unwarranted advantages, they are likely to drift into delusion fueled by their flawed perceptions and aspirations, such as the pursuit of power. Peterson warns against falling into the trap of cynicism, the belief that everything is terrible and can't get better. This cynicism, he observes, stems from naive optimism being shattered by the harsh realities of life. Peterson argues that cynicism can prove harmful as it can foster jealousy towards competent individuals, leading to destructive behavior. He suggests replacing naive optimism with courage, thereby embodying a more balanced, wiser outlook. Peterson's take on the concept of faith further bolstered his argument. He considers faith not as a belief in superstitious notions, but as a commitment to confronting challenges head-on with the presumption of overcoming them. He urges cynics to doubt their own cynicism and question the moral validity of their resentment, paving the way for wisdom. See, the conversation also revolved around the future, how individuals can maintain optimism about it without falling into delusion. By carefully differentiating between fantasy and delusion, Peterson pointed out that it becomes delusional only when one starts ignoring elements of their experience that could inform their future plans more effectively. He advises that in case of plan failures, individuals can introspect and reconsider their strategies or goals. Doing so implies a willingness to discover and correct one's own mistakes, which, although painful, can lead to personal growth. He shared that individuals could seek wisdom through humility and by listening to others, acts that could help them identify and rectify their ignorance. In essence, Peterson emphasizes the value of truth, courage, inquiry, and introspection in life's journey. His discourse underscores the importance of transforming naive optimism into courage and cynicism and arrogance into wisdom to lead fulfilling lives. The host, Chris Williamson, and guest Jordan Peterson continue their discussion on the complexities of self-improvement and personal evolution. One key point Peterson makes is the importance of incrementally progressing towards one's goals. He uses the example of working out at the gym, explaining that when he first started, he was not in good shape. However, after multiple small, incremental steps and adjustments, he gained physical confidence, stopped smoking and drinking, and gained weight and muscle over a period of 3 years. Peterson emphasizes that these small steps eventually gain momentum as progress is not linear, it's geometric. This concept highlights the importance of patience and persistence in one's journey of self-improvement. Throughout the conversation, Peterson emphasizes the danger of unfair comparisons. Individuals often judge themselves based on an inaccurate comparison group that highlights only the successes and not the challenges or effort behind them. He uses Russell Brand and Elon Musk as examples, stating that their exterior success doesn't reveal inner challenges they may face. Peterson mentions Elon Musk's recent statement, "My mind is a storm. I don't think most people would want to be me." Peterson uses this statement to highlight that individuals often only see the surface-level successes and don't realize the mental toll of high-level genius. The conversation exposes the incomplete picture individuals often have about successful individuals they wish to emulate, and the need to remember that every individual has their unique set of challenges. Additionally, Peterson shares his personal experience of writing his first book, Maps of Meaning. He offers insights into his journey of managing an obsessive thought process through physical activities like lifting weights, and admits to having used drinking as a way to shut down the intense thinking. The discussion encourages understanding oneself, acknowledging personal weaknesses and taking small steps towards improvement rather than desiring to become someone else based on an incomplete perception of their life. The conversation continues to explore themes of self-improvement, self-perception, and the dangers of unfair comparison in the pursuit of personal growth. Continuing on to the discussion, Williamson and Peterson start to delve into the crucial topic of creativity and its relationship with conscientiousness. Drawing upon his insightful observation, Peterson regards Elon Musk as a person with a rare combination of hypercreativity and hyperconscientiousness. Further elaboration, based on the fact that these traits usually do not correlate, leads to an understanding that when such unique individuals who embody extreme ends of both these traits arise, they represent very rare cases in the human population, emphasizing Elon Musk's uniqueness. Switching gears, Peterson shares about the changes that occur when individuals endure an increase in scrutiny upon their platforms, paralleling this to his own journey catapulting into fame since 2016. Major impacts due to fluctuating attention turned out to be his newfound awareness of the widespread of demoralization in our culture, especially among young men. Not only was it evident to him, but it also shocked and deeply impacted him emotionally to realize the scale of the problem. Discussing further impact, Peterson talks about how the platform he has, introducing him to a wealth of opportunities which he is grateful for. That sense of gratitude emerges despite the discomfort of confronting widespread misery and facing various challenges. The conversation then opens into an exploratory discussion of being oneself and telling the truth. Peterson talks about his experience applying to graduate school, where he openly laid out who he was, his interests, and flaws. He emphasizes the importance of not pretending to be someone else for the sake of a job, and to always be truthfully expressive of who one is, ensuring that the opportunities that follow are tailored to the authentically presented self. Peterson shares about the teaching path he engaged in that was considered quite unconventional. At this juncture, the discussion integrates the importance of being rooted in one's interests and identity and carrying it through one's professional life. See, Peterson uses this to underline the importance of being authentic, regardless of societal expectations or not. While stressing authenticity, Peterson reiterates the importance of speaking the truth, pointing out the dangers of accepting a lie. Speaking on the topic, he gives insights on the negative impacts of lying, such as distorting one's perceptions, making it difficult to see things objectively, often leading to unfortunate consequences. Undeniably, the theme of truth, authenticity, and transparency resound throughout this portion of the conversation. As we delve further into the discussion, Jordan Peterson elaborates on a significant concept, reframing a fear of always being right as intellectual humility. He emphasizes how having the willingness to ask questions, even if they seem stupid, is the stepping stone towards gaining knowledge and progress. Believing that you know it all, according to Peterson, only stagnates your intellectual growth. Stepping onto a related topic, the conversation then navigates toward the practice of psychopathy in the pickup artist community. This community teaches their members to feign confidence for favorable outcomes, but ultimately this fosters jadedness and cynicism within. Expanding on this, Peterson discusses the detrimental effects of cultivating a false persona that misrepresents the true self. Who indulge in toxic pickup. Artist tactics end up feeling a larger gap between their true selves and the extravagant persona they put on to attract women, making them feel even worse about themselves. Contextualizing his earlier point of intellectual humility, Peterson uses the example of intellectual enemies who criticize your weaknesses. Instead of viewing them as adversaries, he encourages seeing them as a means of identifying one's flaws that were previously hidden. When these flaws are revealed through such attacks, it pushes you to look for them and learn from them. In his personal experience, Peterson admits that attacks coming his way forced him to scrutinize his behavior and grow. The impact of these attacks, according to Peterson, made him rethink and challenge the flaws pointed out by these criticisms, testing if these illicit traits truly existed within him or not. This iteration is the process Peterson refers to as intellectual humility. Addressing the culture of journalism and its role in public perception, Peterson draws attention to journalists seeking to tarnish others' reputations for personal gain. This often results in journalists attempting to trap subjects in word games designed to mislead or create controversy. Reflecting on his interviews with Channel 4's Kathy Newman and Ellen Lewis, Peterson recalls the hostility of those experiences and their impacts on his career. He likens the interviews to verbal traps designed to corner him into saying something that could potentially end his career. However, he acknowledges that these hostile interviews were the ones that did him the most good. Navigating through those snares and emerging unscathed, Peterson mentions how those experiences helped elevate his standing. Throughout this section, Peterson underscores the importance of having the courage to face adversity, the humility to accept criticism and learn from it. The discussion centers on the harmful implications of deception, manipulation, and emphasizes the importance of authenticity, intellectual humility, and continuous learning in personal development. As Peterson continues his conversation with host Chris Williamson, he reflects on adversarial discussions, emphasizing their hidden value. He pegs these conversations as a way to uncover hidden aspects of one's thinking, forcing individuals to thoroughly examine their viewpoints. Peterson then delves into religious rituals, particularly gratitude. Despite the difficulties in life, he suggests cultivating an attitude of gratitude over succumbing to bitterness, even in the face of immense suffering. Drawing on the biblical story of Job, he advocates for maintaining faith and integrity under duress, reframing unfortunate circumstances or adversities as opportunities rather than punishments. A relevant contemporary instance is seen in personal criticisms. Peterson advises turning these into a formative experience rather than being defensive, urging listeners to see the benefits of criticism, even if dealt with malice in the pursuit of self-improvement. The interview then steers towards the topic of seeking validation, often an unfulfilled need from childhood. Peterson highlights the downsides of constantly chasing approval, suggesting it as a symptom of unaddressed personal issues. However, he also stresses that these past struggles aren't pure negatives. They often spur individuals to catapult into a journey of self-growth and discovery. Peterson pulls the lens back to a larger societal level, critiquing the increasing administrative control in universities. He narrates his observation of professors gradually ceding intellectual and institutional control due to fear of controversy or conflict. This, according to Peterson, has paved the way for raw culture to hijack administrative bodies in academic institutions. This dialogue with Williamson swings back to personal experiences, as Peterson shares the disheartening trajectory of academics gradually sacrificing their integrity and voice for the illusion of security and approval. This he portrays is a counterproductive practice as it undermines the fundamental nature of courage. Peterson asserts that courage is not grounded in security or the absence of risk, but is in fact rooted in the face of risk and adversity. He warns that compromising honesty for fleeting security ultimately corrodes one's moral courage and intellectual autonomy. As Peterson further delves into the podcast, he focuses on the concept of identity. According to him, one's identity isn't merely a subjective matter one carries in their head. Instead, it's formed by embedding oneself in social hierarchies at various levels. He suggests that assuming mental health is a personal possession can lead to anxiety and hopelessness. Drawing from the Harvard Graduate School of Education report on young adults' mental health, he shares his perspective on the struggles of transitioning into adulthood. Thanks, the report indicates high anxiety and depression rates among young adults, hinting towards high achievement pressure, immense loneliness, and lack of purpose in their life. Peterson deduces that part of this issue stems from the notion that mental health is something one carries within them, rather than it being influenced by the person's environment and relationships. He proposes that forming stable relationships is key to mental health, signifying the importance of commitment in alleviating aimlessness and impulsiveness. Peterson further elaborates on the concept of self-identity, stating that it extends beyond just the self, but also includes utility to a broad number of people and one's existence within a social hierarchy. He critiques the modern definition of self-identity, often reduced to sexual desire. He disapproves the reduction of sexuality inherent in one-night stands and encourages looking at sexuality as part of a long-term committed relationship, drawing parallels between the different reproductive strategies of animals. He argues that humans are hardwired for long-term relationships given our longest dependency period among all species. He further explores the pernicious effects of indulging in short-term sexual gratification, suggesting it could result in psychopathy, narcissism, and sadism. He also barrels into the issue of population decline and its potential disastrous effects on society. He cautions against the idea of decreasing the population, arguing that growth is a sign of life and stagnation equals death. As part of his closing argument, he revisits the concept of identity, emphasizing its scope beyond personal feelings. Rather, he asserts identity is not merely an inner construct, but a complex web of relationships and interactions with the outside world. Ultimately, he encourages listeners to be responsible individuals who prioritize doing the right thing over being perceived as such, effectively cultivating their self-identity. In this portion of the podcast, Peterson shares interesting perspectives on identity, responsibility, and mental health, drawing significantly from both his personal experiences and acclaimed academic background. He introduces the idea that identities are not simply internal constructs as commonly presumed, but are rather fundamentally grounded in relationships and social roles. In the context of his own experiences as a professor, husband, and father, he argues that these roles represent key aspects of his identity, each immersed in the relationships he shares with his students, wife, and kids. He warns of the potential danger in writing solo and neglecting responsibilities in the pursuit of hedonistic pleasures. According to Peterson, such a lifestyle breeds insanity and misery due to its inherent lack of meaningful interaction and personal growth, explaining that it is often through our commitments that we gain a greater understanding of ourselves and build a mental roadmap for navigating through life. Crucially, Peterson sharply criticizes modern interpretations of self-identity that narrow it down to sexual desires. This sparks a discussion on the different reproductive strategies observed in various animal species, with Peterson highlighting that humans, due to having the longest dependency period among all species, are hardwired for long-term relationships. He then scrutinizes the potential perils of indulging in short-term sexual satisfaction, suggesting links to psychopathy, narcissism, and sadism. Embarking on this topic, he strongly refutes the idea of population decline, contending that growth is an essential sign of life, while stagnation equates to death. In taking a fresh look at identity, Peterson emphasizes its scope as extending far beyond personal feelings. He contends that one's identity is not limited to an individual's personal experience. Rather, it is a complex web of relationships and interactions with people in the world around. He finally challenges listeners to take on personal responsibility, to make a difference over simply appearing to do so, thereby cultivating their self-identity. During this part of the podcast, Chris Williamson and Jordan Peterson delve into a substantial debate surrounding a wide array of notions, primarily dealing with identity, moral consciousness, responsibility, and the biblical understanding of sacrifice. They engage in rich discourse about the nature of identity as both a relational construct and one's consistent dedication to playing out social roles. Peterson asserts that our identity is not eminent, but rather seems more linked to the roles we play within various relationships, adding that different behaviors under different circumstances are building blocks of our identity. He exemplifies this idea by referencing the biblical narrative of Cain and Abel. He describes Cain as the epitome of inappropriate sacrifice, highlighting his propensity for dishonesty, omissions, and pretense. Abel, on the other hand, embodies the willingness to offer his very best, to embrace his social roles fully, thereby representing the light shining on the hill. Peterson further criticizes perspectives of self-identity that narrow down to sexual desires, emphasizing this perspective's potential dangers. He then discusses population decline, saying growth signifies life, while stagnation equates to death. This intertwines with his argument about the nature of sacrifice, explaining that to grow and evolve, one must make sacrifices and confront discomfort, which is epitomized in the biblical story of Christ sacrificing himself for humanity. Exploring the essence of humanity, Peterson asserts that humans exist in a unique sacrificial relationship with the world. He advises the listeners to navigate life by adopting the most appropriate sacrificial relationship. He insists that this approach will reveal the world to them in its most positive guise. Peterson posits that true sacrifice, as represented by Christ in the biblical narrative, means giving up everything with faith that it will lead to a higher purpose or greater good. Moreover, Peterson and Williamson discuss the problematic aspects of performative compassion, labeling it as a form of false sacrifice that undermines genuine empathy. They agree that prioritizing short-term emotional comfort over long-term fulfillment is a manifestation of this issue. Lastly, they touch upon a fascinating debate about mathematical abstractions being more real than the world they represent. Peterson contends that the reality of the world around us is only a dim reflection of the ideal or the essence, emphasizing that deep archetypical narratives, like the ones found in the Bible, are a hyper-real narrative, more real than reality itself. Parallels are drawn with Plato's idea of forms, arguing that just like mathematical abstractions, these narratives are more real than the physical world they describe. And during this portion, Peterson and Williamson explore the repetitive motifs in human experiences and behaviors by drawing on biblical tales and clinical practices. Peterson relates the concept of facing suffering, death, evil voluntarily to his clinical practice of exposure therapy, where people face their fear and grow braver rather than less afraid. He asserts that if one faced everything put before them holistically, they would become a true son of God. The discussion then broaches the subject of indecision articulated by Peterson as a decision itself to avoid something fundamentally, a condition he demystifies with the statement "you age, you pay for your indecision." He employs the biblical story of Job to explain that confronting obstacles causes people to become more competent, and the process of becoming braver generalizes across all problems. Hence, the conversation pivots to the issue of people-pleasing, where individuals evade discomfort and conflict by generally acquiescing to others' wishes, desires, or styles. Peterson criticizes this as a short-term comfort mechanism that jeopardizes long-term performance. He cites the example of a good mother who disciplines her child constructively rather than allowing them to do whatever they want. Shifting to relationship dynamics, Peterson emphasizes the importance of open dialogue with partners regarding actions that annoy or upset the other. He acknowledges the need to introspect and understand if the fault lies within oneself or if the partner is indeed doing something bothersome. To maintain a harmonious relationship, discussions need to dissect problems and face them head-on, improving mutual understanding and fostering personal growth. Peterson concludes his point establishing the I Michelangelo effect, drawing upon Michelangelo's view of his sculptures. The more the marble wastes, the more the statue grows. Peterson suggests that love should allow us to chip away at our partner's unwanted traits, help to expose and refine the hidden potential, acting as catalysts for each other's growth and fulfillment. This wholesome exchange prompts both individuals to strive to be the ideal versions of themselves for the other. This concept echoes Peterson's thesis of voluntary confrontation and sacrifice for long-term benefits and growth. Continuing the discussion, Peterson compares human interactions and learning to play with one another with his encounters with his granddaughter. He emphasizes the importance of knowledge and boundaries in interaction, equating it to the process of a child discerning the acceptable limits to poking fun. The dialogue delves into the concept of optimal deprivation, presented in the light of society's pursuit of comfort. The conversation sways towards the topic of our constant pursuit, engaging the dopamine reward system, which is triggered not by the pursuit of happiness, but by the happiness of pursuit. Referring to dopamine as the driver of engagement and focus, Peterson differentiates between consummatory reward and dopaminergic reward, with the former bringing a behavioral sequence to an end, and the latter acting as evidence of advancement towards a goal. Using this concept, Peterson argues for the pursuit of the highest possible goal, balancing its attainability with the rewarding feeling of moving towards it. As an example, he draws from the story of Abraham from the Bible, who embodied the pattern of sacrificing personal comfort in pursuit of an expanding vision. Next, they ponder on the lack of hardship in our comfortable world, concluding that the optimal difficulty lies in truth. Explaining that truth becomes an adventure. They assert it is unpredictable and comes along with risks, making the journey rewarding. They also touch upon the idea of storing up treasure in heaven, translating it to the skills and multiple ways of viewing the world acquired through a disciplinary process. Diving into ideal physical fitness and perceived attractiveness, Peterson describes the journey to attain a good body as a disciplined pursuit that signifies person's ability to deal with discomfort and pain, which he regards as an essential part of self-improvement. They conclude by exploring the inclination of men to reassess the things they value as they grow older, typically in their late 20s, referred to as a quarter-life crisis. This reassessment process is compared with the story of Moses and the burning bush from Exodus, the moment of reevaluation that sets one off on a new path. Echoing the stories from the Bible, the discussion delves deeper into the mechanisms of social transformation and life transitions. They home in on the point that life will often beckon you in a variety of directions, and that pursuing this call, regardless of where it leads, is critical to personal growth and transformation. Peterson links this idea to the biblical narrative of Moses and the burning bush. As Moses is drawn towards the bush, he ventures deeper into sacred ground, interpreting this as one exploring a new interest or passion in life. Peterson emphasizes that if this pursuit is embraced deeply and without reservations, it could potentially lead an individual to a transformative stage. The latter part of the conversation shifts to the value and pitfalls of a university education. Williamson shares his take on the university experience, recognizing the valuable social interactions and personal growth gained outside the classroom. He stresses the importance of the apprenticeship system in universities, where students can form relationships with professors that could significantly impact their development. Peterson acknowledges that there are some institutions, such as the Hillsdale College, that are managing to uphold the traditional mandate of a university. However, he also criticizes the larger educational system and cites the launch of his Peterson Academy as an attempt to provide an alternative. Both speakers agree that physical coexistence, like having roommates in university, plays a pivotal role in personality development. Peterson puts emphasis on mastering elementary skills, such as introducing oneself and shaking hands, which can build an individual's confidence in social situations. He further warns against the danger of crafting a false self, either online or offline, cautioning that maintaining this facade could eventually transform and damage the essence of one's being. The discussion then circles back to the concept of personal transformation. They elaborate on the concept of monk mode, an introspective journey of isolation to reflect and work on one's flaws and improve overall well. Peterson relates this to the process of confession, a painful and profound self-examination to recognize one's insufficiencies and work on them, countering the saying, fake it till you make it. They stress the significance of practicing authenticity to foster an honest and healthy self-perception. In closing out this piece, Peterson warns about self-deception and the consequences of creating a false persona. He emphasizes that cultivating a sincere approach to one's actions and thoughts, instead of assuming a false identity for appearances, is key to real growth and a balanced soul. In this part of the Modern Wisdom podcast, Chris Williamson and Jordan Peterson delve deeper into the topic of intellect and its role in human understanding. Peterson suggests that attention and intellect are essential elements that can be separated, with attention being responsible for information gathering and the intellect producing thoughts. This leads to a broader conversation around intellectual and spiritual pursuits. Peterson emphasizes the importance of humility, being open to the gaps in our knowledge and seeking to fill them. This is contrasted with what he terms as the Luciferian intellect. An intellect that seeks to place itself in the highest position, often leading to intellectual pride. Those speakers also touch on the role of belief in shaping human perception and actions. It's noted that beliefs, particularly centered on truth and goodness, greatly influence one's course in life. Peterson argues that if individuals don't believe in anything, they become aimless and succumb to hopelessness and anxiety. Further into the discussion, there's an intense dialogue on the genesis and evolution of science as a discipline. Discrediting the popular belief that science and religion are fundamentally opposed, Peterson emphasizes that science is nested in a religious framework, rooted in metaphysical claims about truth and the goodness of understanding truth. He cites the historical origin of universities out of monasteries to further solidify this standpoint. Peterson claims that the scientific enterprise crumbles when disentangled from this metaphysical substrate. Conversations also include exploring Peterson's plans. With his forthcoming book, he shares his hope to reframe readers' understanding of belief and dismantle atheistic arguments with his new literary work. Right towards the end, they talk about the thrill and gratitude of going on tours, speaking before large audiences. Through their open-ended conversation, Williamson and Peterson explore profound and controversial topics, inviting listeners to reflect on their own beliefs, intellectual pursuits, and understandings of truth and science. Further enriching the conversation, Jordan Peterson reflects on the unique relationship they have with their audience. Peterson speaks of his ritual before he makes a speech or presentation, where he scans the audience for the first 10 to 15 seconds. He explains that this is a crucial practice for him to establish a personal connection. He's not merely talking as an audience, but rather to individuals within the crowd. This perspective informs his approach to public speaking, treating all audience members as guests rather than a faceless mass. Peterson also underscores the importance of treating audience members with respect, inclusive of even those who may present as disruptive or problematic. He emphasizes that audience members are guests who have taken the time and made the effort to attend these events, viewing them as essential to maintaining a rich discourse. His team understands this ethos and knows to extend courtesy to everyone, thereby fostering a welcoming and interactive environment. Peterson alludes to the joy he finds in speaking to the audience, expressing his gratitude for such an opportunity. He reinforces the view that being able to share ideas and thoughts with eager listeners is a privilege and should be enjoyed to the fullest. Moreover, he encourages his staff to imbibe a similar mindset, reminding them to be humble and appreciative of the audience's presence and participation. Peterson recognizes the substantial value audience members contribute to an event. Thus, treating them as guests is paramount to his team's approach. Jordan Peterson and host Chris Williamson then wrap up their discussion, expressing mutual appreciation for the conversation. In the end, addressing the audience, Williamson continues to highlight future conversations, ensuring the audience that more enlightening talks with thought leaders like Douglas Murray are around the corner. He invites the viewers to tune in, reinforcing the practice of carrying forward the enriching dialogue to future episodes.